history, and drama. Join us now for the journey of an epic musical, Showboat.
Last night, Kate Pruitt, domestic engineer and soccer mom, put a little salsa in her life. She went to Chi-Chi's. It could have been any one of Chi-Chi's delectable temptations that called out to her. After all, who knows better than Chi-Chi's? Life always needs a little salsa. This week, butter sizzling chayitas get free fried ice cream.
You train hard to be ready to serve when disaster strikes or the nation calls. If you can spend 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year in the Army National Guard, training with men and women who believe that being ready is a part of being free, then call 1-800-GO-GUARD.
In the Army National Guard, you can...
Wave 3 and J-Corps come together for the summer's biggest boat show and sale at Auto Point. 3 days only, June 6th, 7th, and 8th. Choose from both new and used boats, runabouts, cruisers, bass boats, pontoon boats, and personal watercraft from the area's leading retailers all in one location. Shop and save with special financing available. And register to win getaways at Kentucky State Parks to be given away each day. It's end-of-the-year prices at the beginning of the season. The Wave 3 J-Corps boat sale. 3 days only at Auto Point, home of Bill Collins Ford.
Barbecue break McRib.
Take a barbecue break with McDonald's delicious McRib sandwich. It's our tender pork slathered in hickory-flavored barbecue sauce and topped with slivered onions, pickles, and a bakery bun. Make it a meal with America's favorite fries and an ice-cold soft drink like Dr. Pepper. But don't just sit there in your saddle. Hurry into McDonald's today, because the McRib sandwich is long on taste, but short on time.
December 1927, New York City, the height of the Roaring '20s. An extraordinary event is about to take place, an event that will shock a fun-loving public and change the course of musical theater forever. It is opening night of a show unlike anything ever seen before. Opening night of Showboat. In the next hour, we'll see scenes from the magnificent new $10 million Canadian version of this landmark musical. We'll explore the golden era when majestic showboats toured the great southern waterways. We'll discover how North American theater evolved from buck and wing and melodrama to the powerful art form it is today. We'll meet legendary Broadway director Harold Prince. We'll visit behind the scenes, meet the stars of this premiere production at Toronto's stunning new North York Performing Arts Center. Most of all, I hope you'll feel the impact. Be moved as audiences were when this extraordinary musical opened on Broadway more than 65 years ago. Join us now for Showboat, the journey of an epic musical.
Showboat was written by Edna Ferber, and Jerome Kern was first attracted to it and suggested to my father that it would be a good musical idea. I think they were both attracted to those, what I can only call fundamental human elements that were contained in the book, in the story, in the characters, in the people.
I have seen Showboat a few times. It's clearly the groundbreaking American musical, having been done in 1927. It's got one of the most beautiful scores ever written, and it has an extraordinary story. But it was told in 1927 terms. Help loving that man of mine. I thought, well, I've seen a lot of showboats, but I've never seen the one that thoroughly satisfies me. I'd love to work on it some, just to make the storytelling a little clearer, and I'd like to restore music that no one's heard before, that was written originally, and try and present a somewhat different Showboat, which is still true to the spirit of what Oscar Hammerstein originally intended to do.
Showboat arrived at a time in history when musicals were mostly froth and glitter. There were seldom sustained plots or character development. So when Showboat came along and dealt with serious themes, such as miscegenation and husbands deserting wives, it literally shocked New York theater audiences who were accustomed to much more frivolous entertainment.
Prior to Showboat, it was frankly a lot of fluff. It was a question of music hall mentality. Forget about substance of characters, forget about emotion. I mean, just let's make it all very, very superficial. Well, Showboat scrapped all those notions, and Showboat was finally prepared to take issue with the issues of the day.
He says he was born in Mississippi, your papa was white and your mammy black. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Showboat is interesting because it was the first time on a major musical stage that blacks and whites were actually singing together on the stage. And it was a landmark musical for so many reasons, and that is a very important one.
What I'd like to do, Parthy?
No, I don't.
After we shut up the Showboat for the winter, how about you and me making a trip up there?
What are you talking about, Chicago? You must be crazy.
Veteran stage actors Elaine Stritch and Robert Morse play Parthy and Captain Andy.
Gay. I wouldn't care if I never saw him again as long as I live. The whole idea of Showboat appeals to me, and the manner in which it's being done. I think things like this revive the interest in what the American musical is all about. It seems to be slipping away in the theater, the American musical, and I have very good feelings about it. I think things like this revive the interest in what the American musical is all about.
The evening brighten if you come around tonight. Tomorrow night you come around for more. Oh, I'm a little devil. That's what attracted me to Captain Andy, see? Because he is that little devil who twists things and makes things, wants everything to work.
That's enough now, Captain Andy.
Just a sample. What an audience feels is sometimes, very powerful. Just a sample, Frank.
My father and Jerry Kern sat down to write Showboat. They didn't sit down deliberately to do something different or revolutionary, but they did sit down to do something that was different and turned out to be revolutionary.
Jerome Kern and Oscar Hammerstein took the idea for their revolutionary musical to the most important producer of the day, the great Florence Ziegfeld. By 1920, Ziegfeld was best known for his flashy follies. During a span of 30 years, he produced more than 80 shows. The Follies alone featured a series of 20 shows between the years 1907 and 1931. Ziegfeld had been producing shows that involved a storyline. They were called book shows, beginning as early as the 1890s, but he had never done a production as serious as Showboat. By 1927, Ziegfeld was at the apex of a highly successful career. He had the background and courage to risk producing Kern and Hammerstein's daring new concept for a stage production of Showboat.
The thing that Showboat did was help bridge operetta and opera. What people have lost sight of was that opera was just musical theater in its day. What Puccini was writing was Guys and Dolls and Showboat. And because of the existence of opera houses and snobbery, we started to separate the two forms. But what Showboat did was challenge that.
The journey continues in a moment.
It's tempting to believe that things used to be better than they are today. Television was funnier, neighbors were friendlier, and nothing compared to homemade ice cream. At Homemade Brand, we make it with the same good stuff you would. Fresh cream, real vanilla, and great big chunks of cookies, fruit, and nuts for more of that rich ice cream flavor. Because as you already know, nothing tastes better than homemade.
You don't need to make all that noise. That's enough. Could you please stop it? Hey now, Bill, shut up. Shh. Kid, we're not like that in the car. I can't hear something for you. I thought you were hungry. What do you want? Thank heaven for hush puppies.
Long John Silver's, the meal you've been missing.
At Wave 3 News, we want to know what's important to you, so we're listening. We're meeting you face-to-face to find out how we can be more responsive to your concerns.
If you'd like Wave 3 to listen to your organization, call us at 585-2201.
Wave 3 listens. It's the spirit of what we do. It's the spirit of Wave Country.
On the next Ricky Lake, you're not my father, so butt out.
My mom don't pay attention to us anymore. She pays all her attention to him.
I just want to get rid of this dude real bad.
Your own father don't want to be your father, okay?
I'll ask to talk to her, and she'll say, anything you can say in front of me, you can say in front of Dave.
You don't want me in your life, right? You want your mother in your life? You want your mother in your life? Huh? Treat her like she's your mother then.
What do you want from them?
What I want is for them to respect their mother.
Next Ricky Lake.
Monday afternoon at 3 on Wave 3.
It's the biggest boat sale of the summer. End of the year prices at the beginning of the season. The Wave 3 J-Corps boat sale. 3 days only at Auto Point, home of Bill Collins Ford.
Fish gotta swim and birds gotta fly. I gotta love one man till I die. Can't help loving that man of mine.
Showboat was so important because it was the first musical play.
Tell me he's slow.
After Showboat, the history of musical theater was clearly going to be changed forever.
Loving that man of mine.
How you know that song?
Why? Do you know it, Queenie?
I sure do. But I ain't never heard nobody but colored folks sing that song.
Without any question, Jerome Kern is the father of American popular music. If you'd asked, and I once did ask Richard Rodgers, who was his inspiration? Jerome Kern. George Gershwin, Jerome Kern. Irving Berlin, Jerome Kern. Jerome Kern was the father of them all.
Back that day is fine, the sun will shine.
The score to Showboat is interesting because it does reflect the music of the time, the jazz era, the turn of the century, music around World War I.
I first became aware of Showboat when I was in a big band in Montreal, and we did a medley of the tunes from it. And as recently as Miles Davis, I think, we saw the sort of reincarnation a la 1970 style of all the music of Jerome Kern.
She doesn't know I love her. How could she know I love her? Sitting in her room below,
One of Oscar Hammerstein's contributions to American musical theater is that he used songs to advance the story. You can hear that clearly in many of the lyrics he wrote.
Sometimes we meet, she smiles, and oh, her smile's divine. It's such a treat to hear her say, hasn't the weather been fine?
What was more exciting, even, and more revolutionary was that when the character sings a song, that song was written in the style of that character.
It's surely not his brain.
What was also revolutionary is that the only reason a character ever sung a song was because it was an emotional moment in the story.
Love him. Because he's... I don't know. Because he's just my Bill.
I think Kern was up there with George Gershwin. We don't know it as clearly as we do Gershwin, because Gershwin wrote concerti and symphonies and a whole lot of orchestral pieces that were away from the theater. But Kern was that great a musician. And in fact, I hope that this Showboat will illustrate the depth of his serious musicianship.
Jerome Kern and my father worked very intimately together. In their case, the music always came first. And then my father would set the music to words.
That's the old man that I'd like to be. What does he care if the
Hammerstein cared greatly about human beings, and it was manifested, I think, all the way through his life in the words and lyrics, if you will. Such an effectively intelligent man.
The long-lasting appeal of the Kern-Hammerstein score was proven again recently when Michelle Bell sang one of the most memorable of their songs at a concert in Times Square celebrating Broadway. In 1927, the Broadway theater was not what it is today. Blacks and whites were seldom seen on the same stage. Oscar Hammerstein committed himself to changing that situation with this show.
He, in fact, wrote 3 musicals that dealt with the problem of racism. 3 in one lifetime. 3 hits. A Showboat, South Pacific, and then The King and I. It was an issue that consumed him.
My father had a strong sense of fairness about people, so that when he had to deal with unpleasant experiences, such as being black in the South 100 years ago, he had great empathy for that. When he wrote Old Man River, for instance, he expressed things in that song that nobody had expressed before, certainly no white man, but he seemed to have the ability to lose himself in that sense of being a person in that condition, in that situation. He expressed the idea that you don't grow up with prejudice in your mind. It's put in there by people who bring you up and who teach you these things.
I think that when Showboat hit America, it portrayed a vivid, though possibly in parts unfavorable, view of the black role in the South. But it was a truthful view. That's the way it was. That's the way history is. We can't dispute history. We may not like all of it, but we can't dispute it.
Better ask the old river what he thinks.
He knows all about them boys. He knows all about everything. Joe does a lot of work. In the previous productions, you just didn't know quite what he did, you know. In this production, you can see it. It's all physical out there on stage. He basically views everything and capsulizes it within the song of Old Man River as saying, you know, what we go through as black people, it still goes on. Life still goes on, okay? So no matter what goes on, love story, triangle, whatever, within Showboat, as the plot thickens with the love interest of Magnolia and Ravenel, and there's also a strong love interest with Joe and Queenie, and with Joe and the river, because he looks as if the river is as being something that's very, very solitary.
I feel that not only in Showboat, but in any other vehicle that personifies any kind of human suffering or of any kind brings a certain dignity to that particular race, because people immediately, their feelings go to those people that are depicted in it.
Singing that song, you and me, we sweat and strain, body all aching and back with pain. Tote that bag, lift that veil, get a little and you learn. Trying, I'm tired of living and scared of dying, but Old Man River, he just keep rolling along.
The journey continues in a moment.
Fazoli's celebrates two sensational new samplers. Juicy meatballs and hearty meat sauces on a platter that's a feast for meat lovers. Primavera vegetables, rich tomato sauce, and ricotta stuffed ravioli on a fresh new veggie sampler. It's a sampler celebration you won't want to miss.
Fazoli's real Italian, real fast.
Ripe, juicy strawberries, one of nature's greatest treats. Carl and Gerald Huber invite you and your family to come pick delicious strawberries now in beautiful Starlight, Indiana. Ready pick berries available too. Kids will love the petting park, and you'll enjoy the gift shop, the cheese factory, the farm market, and Huber's award-winning winery. Just follow the signs from I-64 West to Huber Orchard and Winery. Starlight, Indiana. It's strawberry time.
Wave 3 News, recognized for outstanding coverage with 5 Emmy Awards, for live team coverage of the Bullitt County tornadoes, outstanding photography of the distillery fire, the emotional stories of women who struck back against domestic violence, interesting stories about people in Wave Country, and promotion of our outstanding high school football coverage. Proud to be recognized for our commitment to excellence. Wave 3 News, where coverage comes first. That's the spirit of Wave Country.
Last night, Kate Pruitt, domestic engineer and soccer mom, put a little salsa in her life. She went to Chi-Chi's. It could have been any one of Chi-Chi's delectable temptations that called out to her. After all, who knows better than Chi-Chi's? Life always needs a little salsa. This week, butter sizzling chayitas get free fried ice cream. Bell South lets your words span the globe. With
with cellular service on 5 continents. Long distance in Australia. Wireless in Europe, Latin America, and beyond. The world's most advanced technology launching your words to places all over the world. Because a word can have many meanings, but it means nothing until it's shared. Bell South.
1927, rare film footage, rehearsals for the Ziegfeld production of Showboat. Many famous performers have appeared in the numerous stage productions and 3 motion pictures of Showboat. Norma Terrace, Charles Winninger, W.C. Fields, Cedric Hardwicke, Stephen Fetchit, and countless others, including the great Paul Robeson, who played Joe on both stage and screen. Showboat had been a high point for many of these performers, but particularly for one doe-eyed actress named Helen Morgan. Helen created the role of Julie and became one of the most popular performers in America.
Actually, I was born in Toronto, October 1900. My mother was a struggling waitress at the Roadhouse restaurant at the CN rail yards. All those rowdy workers, train tracks everywhere. She told me it was cold the winter I was born. She was all alone then, no doctor or midwife or anybody. I guess that's why music ended up as a way of life for me. Sort of a warm escape from harsh reality.
Because he's wonderful, because he's just my Bill. He can't play golf or tennis or polo.
The role of Julie in this production is played by Lonette McKee. She is the first black actress to perform the role in a major North American production.
Dozens of men that I know.
Julie is the classic tragic role. I won't call her a heroine, but I'll say she's a classic tragic.
You're gonna be sorry you were never born.
I find Julie's story is quite significant today, actually. I can certainly sympathize with why a woman in the 1800s would choose to pass as white rather than to live as a slave.
You have a case of miscegenation on board.
Wisdom comes with struggle. And certainly we've struggled, so hopefully we're wiser for it.
Because he's... I don't know. Because he's just my Bill.
One thing that's interesting about this production is Hal's vision to make the music alive, keep the story going. So we've taken some of the operatic moments out and put them into a new context with the dance arrangements that David Crane and Susan Stroman have created. And the time changes within the story of Showboat are much clearer now and much stronger.
Susan called me and said, you know, the Charleston, which is the last number in the show, was in fact invented by the black community, then taken by the white community and interpreted by it, but obviously its genesis and the juice of it was created by the black community, so that she's illustrating in the show.
Instinct things come and old things go. What I've seized is the opportunity to show where young Kim and all her white friends learned the Charleston from, and I'm able to do that in the montage when we go through 25 years. I have 3 different street performers during that montage. One starts out as a one-man band. This is on the streets of Chicago, and the doorman shoos him away. Then we go to about 1915, and we have 2 black tap dancers. The doorman shoos them away. Then we get to 1921, and we have 3 black Charleston kids and a trumpet player, and a black doorman who allows them to stay there, with white folks watching. So it's very clear that they are learning the Charleston from these kids on the street. And it was usually the blacks who invented it, and the whites stiffened it up and took it to another dimension.
Many great actresses have played the role of Queenie. The original production featured Tess Gardella, and the wonderful Hattie McDaniel performed the part in the 1936 film version. Hattie later became the first black performer to win an Academy Award for her role in Gone with the Wind.
My heart is too full to tell you just how I feel. And may I say thank you, and God bless you.
Hey, where you think you going? Yeah, you! Don't you know this show is starting soon?
In the past, Queenie was played as this big black woman, black mammy, if you will. And certainly, I could not have possibly played her that way. I don't see myself that way. And I'm not taking anything from the actresses that have done it in the past. But I could not have done it that way, and I'm glad that I'm getting an opportunity to do it the way that I see her naturally. I don't look for anything outside of myself to, quote unquote, say who I am. I know who I am. I know what I am. And that's why I can readily play the role of Queenie and be happy about it.
We found there's a wealth of music in Showboat. The first production was well into 5 hours long. A lot of Kern's music has been cut from various productions.
I see.
There's ragtime influence in the show. There's Charleston, there's foxtrot. There is band music. There is very classically symphonic music. Captain Andy's theme, which is interesting. Captain Andy's floating show, because this backwards is Old Man River. So what Kern did is he has the same very simple four-note melody, and inverted one way, it's Captain Andy and the excitement of the showboat and the perhaps naive attitudes of some of the people in the story, and backwards and slow, it is the theme of the river, which never stops.
Stay tuned. The journey continues.
Happy birthday, Grandma.
Oh, my.
Make a wish, Mom.
Mom, when do we get some Edie's ice cream?
As soon as Grandma blows out the candles.
Ooh. Edie's Double Fudge Brownie. Double churned. With real baked brownies. What could be better?
We got a helicopter, they got a helicopter. We got reporters, they got reporters. We got exclusives, they got exclusives. We got pencils, they got pencils. Local news is getting so competitive, it's kind of silly. When you get right down to it, it's the people that really make the difference. People like Jackie Hayes, voted Louisville's best anchorwoman for 7 consecutive years. See the difference. Turn to Wave 3 News, where coverage comes first. That's the spirit of Wave Country.
Hey, think you could take on the biggest water park around? Yeah! The all-new 600,000-gallon wave pool, the 1,000-foot lazy river, wild twisting water slides, the rushing river rapids, and the huge new Buccaneer Island where kids can climb, slide, and splash. So, think you could handle even more? Good, because it's right in the middle of the biggest theme park around. The new Waterworks, now twice as big and free with admission to Paramount's Kings Island. Save $7 off one day or $10 off two-day general admission with coupons from Kroger. Park now open daily.
Wave 3 News, recognized for outstanding coverage with 5 Emmy Awards, for live team coverage of the Bullitt County tornadoes, outstanding photography of the distillery fire, the emotional stories of women who struck back against domestic violence, interesting stories about people in Wave Country, and promotion of our outstanding high school football coverage. Proud to be recognized for our commitment to excellence. Wave 3 News, where coverage comes first. That's the spirit of Wave Country.
I think the most important thing about Hal Prince is that he directs with a cinematic style. He understands the concept of seamless transition. The musical flows. It never is interrupted. It never halts. It's always moving from scene to scene in a very effective way.
The staging and the transition of the sets and the people moving the sets is very important. We never stop. We never have a blackout. Everyone moves the furniture. Everything moves right along.
Harold Prince is a really designer's director. I mean, you couldn't ask for anyone better. When I met him originally, I was actually living on my boat, and he never quite understood that. I mean, he always thought that was pretty funny, living on a boat.
Leave it up there. We'll drop it down.
There's a paperback book out of photographs of Natchez in 1890 through the Trenties. And I said, why don't you call these people up? And they turned out to have 250,000 glass negatives.
The Gandy Historical Collection of photographs shows thousands of images of life in Natchez, a typical small town around the turn of the century.
Beginning around 1870, they began to build bigger and better boats, and for about 20 to 25 years, the traffic on the river was probably greater than it had ever been before. The biggest one was one called the J.M. White, which was built in 1878.
It was more than 300 feet long and 90 feet wide. It had a fine Chickering piano in the Grand Salon. It had room for maybe 250 people to eat. And it was built to be a luxurious passenger boat, but also to carry cotton.
Showboats featured a wide variety of entertainment, from circuses to novelty acts to drama and dance. Almost anything that would draw an audience could be seen on a showboat.
This was kind of before the organization of actors, you know, in Equity. They recruited all these people. I mean, it was really like summer stock on a barge. It must have been wonderful, actually.
You had vaudeville turns, you had chorus numbers often, and you had melodrama.
Showboats were not self-powered. They were always pushed or towed from one port to another and then tied up and left there. As long as people would pay to see the shows, they would stay.
It was the railroad that finally brought an end to the grand showboat era.
A harbor meant for me. I drift along with my fancy.
Character Gaylord Ravenel is he's a river gambler. He's a man with a past, a checkered past. He's if you grew up in the 60s or 70s, he would be one of these people that stayed in school forever, probably trying to figure out what to do. He has no direction in life, but he has a certain joie de vivre about him.
Let's imagine we've just met.
But we really have.
Well, yes, but
Let's suppose when he encounters Magnolia, he interjects a new element into her life and she into his. I mean, the very first words that Ravenel says are, "Sometimes I thank my lucky stars my heart is free, but other times I wonder, where's the mate for me?"
Others find peace of mind in pretending. Couldn't you, couldn't I, couldn't we?
When Oscar Hammerstein wrote Magnolia into the musical, I believe she was the first, one of the first, if not the first, leading lady to actually have an emotional journey and not just be one of the cuties in the chorus.
Showboat is a wonderful show for a lighting designer. It has everything in it. It has dawn, sunset, the river, Mississippi. It has Chicago. It has every time of day, night, all the seasons of the year.
48. Go to Q48.
We're using a lot of water. The whole thing is on the Mississippi. Even when we're in Chicago, we want to feel the river everywhere. So we have water under the stage that we can light up, and we can open parts of the stage and light this water up, so there's a sort of shimmering.
We actually found a car called the DeWitt, which has been in constant production, as far as I know. It's a real car, a 1900s car, and they built us an early taxi.
The stage is packed with scenery. All the scenery is very three-dimensional. It has to be lit from exactly the right angle to bring out all the shadows and, feeling and texture of each piece. Eugene Lee has done this remarkable job, and it's very realistic, but it's sort of super realistic. So the lighting takes the shapes and forms and makes them come to life.
There probably are no larger legit shows than Showboat. It's incredibly big. I'm sure that all of the people you talked to will tell you how big Showboat is. It's big.
Technology, of course, is changing enormously. I mean, nowadays we have computers and moving lights. We have some very original equipment in this show that's, some of it's never been used before. We're searching for a sort of an epic quality. An epic in two senses, in a sort of Brechtian sense of a sort of very powerful pictures of light and vast sort of shafts of sunlight. So it's all sort of super realistic on the one hand, and then in super romantic at the same time. The analogy of Gone with the Wind and the sort of off into the sunset at the end is hopefully what we're going to evoke.
Stay tuned. The journey continues.
Last night, Kate Pruitt, domestic engineer and soccer mom, put a little salsa in her life. She went to Chi-Chi's. It could have been any one of Chi-Chi's delectable temptations that called out to her. After all, who knows better than Chi-Chi's? Life always needs a little salsa. This week, butter sizzling chayitas get free fried ice cream.
Wave 3 and J-Corps come together for the summer's biggest boat show and sale at Auto Point. 3 days only, June 6th, 7th, and 8th. Choose from both new and used boats, runabouts, cruisers, bass boats, pontoon boats, and personal watercraft from the area's leading retailers all in one location. Shop and save with special financing available. And register to win getaways at Kentucky State Parks to be given away each day. It's end-of-the-year prices at the beginning of the season. The Wave 3 J-Corps boat sale. 3 days only at Auto Point, home of Bill Collins Ford.
Here's a special investment opportunity you should take stock in. Now you can own a Lincoln Town Car and get $5,000 cash back. Or lease Town Car for just $4.99 a month for 24 months. Plus, current lessees get an additional $500 cash back. These are two great deals on the roomiest luxury sedan of them all, Lincoln Town Car. It's not just the ultimate expression of luxury, it makes sound financial sense as well. But the market closes soon, so see your Lincoln dealer today.
Your whole week has gotten off to a bad start. Nothing's gone right. You feel like some caged animal. You've got to get away. Escape to Joe Huber Family Farm and Restaurant. Just 20 minutes from most anywhere. Relax and get the best home-cooked meal in Kentuckiana. Get back to nature or just get away. And don't think about tomorrow. Escape to Joe Huber Family Farm and Restaurant during the week in beautiful Starlight, Indiana. Strawberries are in. Pick your own or get them pre-picked at Joe Huber's.
Showboat opened in New York in the famous Ziegfeld Theater, which was built in 1926.
Greatest show. There he is. There he is, Florence Ziegfeld. Get a good look?
It was reputed to be the grandest palace of entertainment in New York. It had seats upholstered in gold, and the entire auditorium was decorated with a huge mural featuring medieval characters. Ziegfeld claimed the mural was bigger than the one in the Sistine Chapel. The theater was designed by the longtime friend of Ziegfeld's, Joseph Urban, who was responsible for sets for many of Ziegfeld's shows dating back to 1914. Urban was recognized as one of the world's most talented theater artists, and he designed the original settings for Showboat. In 1929, the man who produced the most important musical of the time lost all his money in the stock market crash. And a few years later, on the verge of bankruptcy, Florence Ziegfeld died. And in 1960, his magnificent theater was unceremoniously demolished to make way for a modern commercial development.
Thanks. Can you hold it for a second? We got one more coming through. Well, they're going to have to wait.
Hal Prince did not want this to look like a musical comedy, and hopefully I have kept away from that. And the only time that I get a little glitzy, I suppose, is in the Trocadero and the turn of the century New Year's Eve.
Under the guidance of Tony Award-winning designer Florence Klotz, the Showboat wardrobe department took more than 125,000 hours to make the 450 costumes.
I'm sorry, I took a look at the sketch and that's it.
Costumes for the female chorus alone required over 6 kilometers of fabric. More than 400 caps, hats, bandanas, and hair bows were handmade.
I work very well with lighting designers, because, lights could make or break you, So he's got all my fabrics for every scene, and that's up to him now to do the gels that will bring forward the colors. This is not a movie, so I'm trying to get your eye, color-wise, to go to who the principal person is. So therefore, I do it like a painting, so that your eye will go to the red, who happens to be the main character.
So what happens now is there's an entr'acte, and the entr'acte...
Harold Prince probably is more involved with the way what we are looking at looks like and how that supports the story at hand, the actors at hand, the material at hand. And he understands the importance of it to such an extent that every show that Harold Prince directs is in its own way a living painting.
Hal is able to back up everything he says with this incredible wealth of knowledge that he has and amount of research that he has done. And that's what's so joyous about working with him, because no matter what we do, he can tell you why you are doing it.
He's a wonderful director for me because I wouldn't dare bore him. Wouldn't dare. So when I come in the morning, I say, I've got to get his attention. I've got to make him laugh. I've got to make him cry, whatever. Now, watch, Hal. I remember
Yeah, I got it. I'm glad.
It's 8 o'clock now.
Hal's concern for social issues has been reflected all through his work in the theater. I mean, whether it was dealing with Nazis in Germany and Cabaret, or dealing with pogroms in Russia, with Fiddler on the Roof, or street gangs and whites fighting Puerto Ricans in West Side Story. It's always been there, and it's always been a compelling factor in driving his work.
We have two separate ensembles. When you hear everybody singing together at the end of the show, it's an extraordinary experience that rivals any I've had.
Ensembles have beautifully danced together and gelled together, and it seems to be very happy, and I believe that comes from them trusting the creative team. And if you can trust the creative team, then I think the actors will give you more and more and more.
There are many roles in the show, many more than I'm used to in a musical, because it covers so many years. There are 8 or 10 important roles in the show. And each one is a major responsibility for the artist playing it.
Showboat is the third collaboration for Hal Prince and Garth Drabinsky. As well as hugely successful productions of The Phantom, the team created the daring new musical Kiss of the Spider-Woman, which won Best Musical honors in London and a record 7 Tony Awards on Broadway.
Canada should be encouraged, because after all, that's why we did Kiss of the Spider-Woman first, to recognize its potential as the starting point of musicals. Not sit back and wait for musicals that are successful in other countries to come here, but to realize that it actually made one here and can continue to create them here and then ship them to other countries.
Showboat has lasted a long time, and it continues to have appeal for audiences all around the world. The reasons for that have to do with the elements, the dramatic and human elements that the story deals with. There are fundamental emotions that everyone can understand and identify with, and it has great appeal.
There aren't too many opportunities when an audience can cry, and cry at all the right things. Cry at the relationship of family, cry at the breakup of family, cry at matters that tug at the heartstrings of decent people.
Well, I really firmly believe that any kind of music can make tremendous changes, Showboat included. It can make great changes in people's lives. I feel that there are people today walking around, and I'm speaking of people of all races, certainly including the black race, that are not aware of that period speaking of a black person, in their history. For some reason, we want to deny in certain factions the fact that this took place. This type of thinking was there. It was there. And people lived through it. Blacks lived through it. Whites lived through it. And today, fortunately, in certain environmental circumstances, we hopefully know better, and we have grown to be greater human beings because of this. And I hope that the performance of Showboat will increase that capability within us as human beings.
So many things that happen in Showboat are applicable to the problems of today. It's warm, and God, with all we're watching today, and all we're hearing on the news today, and all we're seeing within the family in this country in any country, is so scary. And in Showboat, you've got it. You've got a family sticking together.
A love of family, and family in the larger sense, the family of man. That's what the show's about. That's what Oscar Hammerstein is about.
And so, with this new Canadian production, the journey of Showboat continues. Audiences have always responded to the emotional appeal of the story and the rich harmonies of the score, listening with their hearts. For the human heart is the ultimate destination on the journey of the epic musical Showboat.
I'm driving 10 and 2, and you're supposed to think I'm traveling cross-country. You know, the whole where the buffalo roam thing. With Bell South Mobility Wireless Service, I can use my cell phone anywhere my Hitchcockian set takes me. Because only Bell South Mobility gives you a single nationwide roaming rate, sea to shining sea. A low statewide rate, and when you're ready to take the training wheels off and sit at the big people's table, advanced digital technology. And that's more than your mom can pack in your lunchbox.
Only Bell South Mobility offers you all this and the largest coverage area in the Southeast. Count on it.
Once upon a time, Holiday World and Splash and Safari were called Santa Claus Land. And once upon a time, you were called Cutie Pie. Things change. You've gotten a little bigger. Holiday World and Splash and Safari have gotten a lot bigger. You've changed your idea of a good time. So have we with our new Oterongo Slide into Darkness. Our Raven roller coaster was voted Ride of the Year, and our staff was voted the friendliest in the world. Isn't it nice to know that bigger can be better? For your free Indiana Play Money coupon book, call 1-800-230-8844.
There would be no hard, cold floors.
A woman's hospital stay.
No antiseptic atmosphere.
Should heal both body and spirit.
No loud noises or intrusions.
Clark Memorial Hospital introduces the Women's Care Place. A whole new wing created by women for women. With tastefully appointed private rooms.
It should be like staying in a fine hotel.
Clark Memorial. Working wonders for women.
Last night, Kate Pruitt, domestic engineer and soccer mom, put a little salsa in her life. She went to Chi-Chi's. It could have been any one of Chi-Chi's delectable temptations that called out to her. After all, who knows better than Chi-Chi's? Life always needs a little salsa. This week, butter sizzling chayitas get free fried ice cream.
On the next Inside Edition.
I'm always playing to win.
All he wants is to give me a fair chance to play.
What makes this basketball star so amazing? He's beaten all the odds.
Just do what you want to. Whatever in your heart, you go for it.
See why he'll be setting college records before he even plays his first game. And meet Cindy, the most popular woman to ever hit the internet.
You can just turn on your computer and there it is, anytime you want it.
Watch Inside Edition.
Monday night at 7:30 on Wave 3.
The only local and national news online at wave3.com.
This is NBC.